Okay, I think in that case then, record turnout, so kind of good work. Okay, so welcome to the ITV Technology Forum. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and for the next 30 or so minutes, you're in for a rare treat, some high quality ITV content and not a single advert in sight. We have today Sofia, Vaughan-Jones and Jim Taylor from the CDT team, who will be telling us all about how the content flows through the pipes and tubes that make up the ITV back, as it were. So please give it up for Jim and Sofia.
Okay, hello. This is slightly, it's not too self-indulgent. I do want to encourage everyone in their own teams to think about doing something similar, because what sparked us to do this is so that we learn more about everyone else as well. So hopefully that helps kick something off with you. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about CDT team, what we do, what we're up to, who we are, putting names to faces as well. So let's just get stuck in. So Andrew G is not here today, but he's one of the senior Scala developers in our team. We also have me, I'm here. Alex, somewhere in the room. Joe, who's also not here. Andrew Smitherin. Alan, who started almost a month ago now. And Joe as well as another new starter. Dev, who's one of our platform engineers. Daniel. Oh, the new picture didn't work. Sorry. Daniel.
That's disappeared.
I know.
We need him.
He wanted a stupid Easter egg picture in the background. Daniel is one of our platform engineers. Jim Taylor is our product owner, and George is our agile delivery manager, who also joined fairly recently. So this is us. We're on the 4th floor. Come and see us if you want to chat about anything that you see today. We have a little breakout area that we can kind of sit down in and talk about anything that you want to talk about. So our motto, or our kind of, mission statement, is to get the right content to the right place at the right time every single time. And Jim is going to give us a kind of overview of what that means.
Okay. Hi everyone. So this says it in a nutshell, as a vision statement should do. What is CDT about? The CDT's been running for quite a long time. It was originally the content delivery management project, and then it morphed into a team and a product of its own. So Kevin is just there, and Dave Hornsby, who you may remember, were instrumental in getting that kicked off. So the team itself and the way in which we work is quite mature, which is great for me. So what do we do? Well, we're about getting content out of the building. So programmatic content I'm talking about here. So the program's none of those dirty ads that people have finished making. They get sent into a content services company called Deluxe. That may be changing soon. Some news about that soon, I'm sure. They process content for us, and then it comes in onto our Isilon storage. Isilon's just a big disk, and we process it on from there. So see, we send it to broadcast, so that it can be put out into everyone's home via a great company called Red Bee. We also are responsible for getting it onto ITV Hub and to Sky and Virgin. So to do that, we need to process it through a transcoding farm. We use a Telestream Vantage transcoding farm. All transcoding means a fancy video term that just means changing video from one format to another. So we take it from a large broadcast format, 100 megabits per second, everything looks beautiful, down to small format, still looks quite beautiful, but not quite as beautiful as before. We also handle archiving, so those big files that we take in, we keep them. Around about a year ago, we put in a new piece of storage we call the Digital Preservation Archive, or DPA for short, and that is where content can live in theory forever, although the world and the universe would probably end at some point. So until then, at least, it'll be stored there. Quite nihilistic. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Friday afternoon. Sophia said, upbeat, be upbeat. So it's actually a tape robot. If you go up to Leeds, I encourage you to go and have a look at it, because tape robots are really cool. I think they're cool. Anyway, because it's a robot, right? It picks up big tapes, and so when we put stuff on there, it goes onto a cache, which is just a bunch of hard drives. Martin knows all about this. And then it commits it to a tape, which are big digital tapes called LTO tapes, not VHS that you might be thinking of. We've kind of moved on a little bit from that. And then we get it back. It picks up that same tape, loads it in, puts it back on the cache, and we get it back into our WIP Pro storage. You're probably going to talk about this in more detail in a second. So the detail. So what do? We take in files from Deluxe, we ship them to Redbee for broadcast. We process them for online, we crunch them down into those small transcoding formats. We archive the source, the master format, so that we can recreate those transcodes and resend it to broadcast whenever we want. And how does it work? Sophia's probably going to come to this in a second as well. I probably should have read the slide deck. It's a whole bunch of Scala microservices that fit together beautifully, always in sync. A few things have gone wrong today, but if things didn't go wrong, then we wouldn't be here, right? The kind of history of it is that we had some off-the-shelf products that were doing those jobs of kind of handling the workflow. And so a couple of years ago, we decided that we wanted to pull that out. And we've replaced those off-the-shelf products with microservices built in-house. And so the business logic is now handled by us instead of by a third-party tool. And we don't have to shake our fists at them all the time. We still use an off-the-shelf product called Vidispine as our MAM system. MAM is a media asset management system. It's basically a database that connects to a file system, fancy database, that has a few functions, media-based functions within it, so it can do things like hash a big video file. And we're going through the process of upgrading our MAM system right now. It's called Vidispine. We'd love it to behave better than it does. A few of the team would like to replace that with in-house systems as well. So we're constantly in that kind of debate of off-the-shelf versus build it ourselves, which is healthy. Okay, is that enough?
Yeah.
Cool. So, but what do we do? This is more going to be the part where I talk about the team. Too far. We go bowling a lot. We have a trophy that you'll see on our desks. I'm currently the holder, so just putting that out there.
All bowling trips since then have been cancelled.
Yeah, I've had it since September. We often go to Flight Club, which is one of our also lunchtime activities.
Darts.
Which is darts. It's basically hipster darts. We like to do hack days and what we call personal development days. So we've got a indicator of whether our end-to-end tests are broken or not, which is quite cool. But one of our success stories was this thing called Mio, which is a throwback to a workflow management system that we decommed.
Told me you would change that.
That's Jim asking for help. But it's a success story because we have a team in Leeds called Content Ops who often ask us questions that Mio has now replaced. So you can ask it where a particular production ID is, you can ask it what's restoring and where from, and it's been a really good tool that's come out of a hack day. So we play Smite in the sun a lot. No one knows what Smite is, but it's basically an outdoor activity that's similar to Skittles, but much more fun, and we play it quite a lot. So if anybody wants to play with us, let us know. We like socials. This is St. Patrick's Day last year. This is Dave's leaving day. We did a treasure hunt. hiking in the Lake District for a conference. That was pretty fun. Christmas and hen parties apparently, so that was a pretty good one. Can you see? Yeah.
Very pretty, Jane. Thanks.
Also, something that's interesting about our team is that we have started a pretty flexible policy on remote working. We've trialled it, it's gone well. We've had some challenges that we feel like we've overcome, so if anybody has any questions on that as well, we're open to answering them. And these are kind of the setups that people send us pictures of in the morning. But what do we actually do? So why do we exist, I guess? These are workflows that we do. I'm going to go over them quite high level because I didn't really know how to gauge the room. But please stop me at any point if you have any questions. So one of the functions of the team is to get content that ITV needs into what we call the WIP. So it's our storage that things happen, magic happens from that storage. To do that, we use Trackit, which is a way in which people... What was the tagline we thought of earlier?
Tagline for Trackit?
Yeah, like... we had a good one. I've forgotten it. Never mind. It's how people organise their work orders. So we order things for broadcast, we order things for catch-up and archive, and that comes from an Accenture-built system called Trackit. Yeah. The first microservice it touches in our system is called the work order service, and that keeps track of all those work orders. And then we have a service called content order service, which organises ordering a piece of content that fills several work orders. The first place content sourcing looks is in our storages, so it checks WIP. If it's not in WIP, it checks our medium storage called the CDS. If it's not there, it checks our permanent storage, the DPA. If it's not there, we will order it from either the Leeds team, which is no longer media transfer, it's content delivery, which is the big tapes in Leeds, or Deluxe, which is, as Jim said, our, what would you call it? The
content
services provider. The end game for all of these is to get it into the WIP. And once it's in the WIP, we can start to do things with that content. Okay, cool. Another function that we do is we send content to broadcast. So we use a microservice called file asset delivery. Oh, also back in the last one, this is VidiSpine. This is the thing that Jim was talking about. Sorry. Send content to broadcast. So we use a microservice called FAD, file asset delivery, to send jobs to Signiant, which moves files from place to place. It's an off-the-shelf solution.
So accelerated delivery.
Which we use to move a very tiny, teeny XML file to a trigger file.
It's a sledgehammer to cracking up.
We use it for other things as well. But and then Ericsson or Redby takes it from our storages and puts it on the TV. Another thing we do is we send content to Catch-Up or VOD Archive, so Sky On Demand or .com, which is the website. So instead of going to FAD, it will go to the transcode service, and we use Vantage. Again, Jim mentioned it, is our on-premise we use it for transcoding, and that will output the transcode for each of the work orders that we had in work order service, and then send the metadata to syndication, yes, and that'll do the rest of the delivery. Another function we have is we send off-air content to the hub after broadcast. So this is fairly relevant for Love Island. Love Island needs to get on the hub faster. So we've, since last year, added this workflow in. So M2A is a company that will transcode the Love Island, for example, as it's airing on the TV. Once it's finished, which should be fairly soon after it's aired, it gets dropped into an S3 bucket, an AWS S3 bucket. Amazon S3 bucket, sorry. We have a Lambda that we've written. It's in Node currently. I'll talk about more of our tech stack in a sec. That will trigger our other Scala microservice called S3 Manager that will download it into the right place on the Isilon. So we have an Isilon on Greenwich and Leeds for the different content. So that's how we're getting Love Island on the TV faster for everyone this summer. And this is the last one. We also send content to shared pipeline. So for example, we have partners like STV that will take a more of a standardized transcode, which means that we can onboard partners quickly if they choose to have this delivery method. It's quite complicated, but basically it's the same as catch up and archive, except when Vantage calls back to us to say that the transcode is done, we'll then kind of, other than that, Vantage, so that happens as the same as catch up and archive, but also what happens is syndication drops. This one's a bit fluffy because I've only just learned about this myself. We'll drop it into a shared pipeline S3 bucket, again in Amazon. We have a Lambda that sits there that's also written in Node that will trigger a SNS message for a partner. That partner system will then retrieve the media and put it in their storage. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is really cool. It means that onboarding, as I said, onboarding partners is going to be much sleeker in the future, hopefully. So what technology do we use? We used to use, so this is a little bit more techy, we use Scala mostly, other than the 2 node lambdas that I mentioned. We used to use a framework called Scalatra, but we swapped it for HTTP4S and FS2 streams. That's been going really well. Why? People weren't too happy with Scalatra and the way that it was based on Java servlets. And HTTP4S and FS2 is to do with a stack called Type Level Stack, and it's an organisation that keep a track of a lot of frameworks and libraries that for people to use. It's probably a bit more complicated than that, but basically that's why we decided to switch. And HTTP4S, actually Lee was kind enough to do a discussion with us about the pros and cons of the 2 frameworks we were choosing between, and we chose HTTP4S, and it's been going well so far. Same for, we used to use a functional programming helper library called Scala Z, and we've swapped it for CATS. Again, this is to be more in line with the type level stack, and again, going fairly well so far. The same, we used to use Slick, which is a database framework, yeah. And we've swapped it for Doobie, type level stack. A lot of this is the same, sorry. We use Argonaut and Circe. Circe fits better with the above technologies, but we do like Argonaut. For our JSON libraries, JSON frameworks. We use RabbitMQ for most of our microservices to talk to each other. And most of you will know we have a RabbitMQ Scala wrapper library called Bucky, which we use quite a lot. And most of our services are hosted in AWS. We have a few that are on-prem because it needs quite close contact with our storages, but mostly they're on AWS. We have the AWS Lambdas, we have S3 buckets, and stuff like that. So our deployment, we push to master, it will go into QA. It will automatically run our integration tests, our end-to-end tests in the QA environment. If that passes, it'll automatically go to stage, and then we have a manual push to production for our services. No other reason than that's just what the team are comfortable with, I think. And the ways we work. So we favour pair programming. We do it quite often. It's the default on all of our tickets. We're getting pretty good at it, I think. No one seems to be complaining. We favour pairing. So when we pair, we don't tend to do code reviews. So we rely on the pair for code quality, which I think some people find interesting. And then obviously if we're in that pair, we're working on master, we're pushing straight to master. So that's something people find slightly different or interesting. Again, I mentioned that we have quite a flexible approach to remote working. I'd say most of the team work from home between 1 to 2 times a week. Our team tries to come in on Fridays, especially, like that's a day that we all make sure we come in for maybe a lunch or a smite or a bowling. just to make sure that we all still have those days together as a team. We favour TDD. That's kind of like the ideal approach to programming, I think, in our team. It doesn't always happen, as everyone knows, if you're tinkering away or trying something new. But that seems to be working as the ideal, especially pairing. You can do a race to green, which is quite a fun way to pair together. And we have a Kanban board, and we do lots of agile stuff like retrospectives and stand-ups. I think most of ITV follow the same processes. So coming to the end, we're just going to show you some of the stuff that we have in our team. This is our Kanban board. It's very big because we have lots of ideas. We have an opportunity backlog that we try to keep groomed.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Opportunity backlog is mainly tech debt stuff. We have an allowance of about 30% of our time to do tech debt, which is, I think, is quite high. But I think overall that we've managed to persuade our business owners that there's a benefit to them of doing that. So it's not that we as a tech team have decided to do that. We've got buy-in from the business to do that, which it benefits both them and us, I think, because as I'm sure you're aware, if you don't fix tech debt, then eventually you end up with a big swamp.
Something I think is interesting to bring up that we've recently introduced, and it's working really well so far, is having this lightning task column. And we're quite strict on what goes in it, or we try to be. These are really quick tasks, usually changing one thing in one file that needs to be done. Like, for example, we're upgrading our, we've got a shared library version that has some extra endpoints in it. And it's quite a few little tiny tasks that can be done. And this is nice because when you're maybe waiting for something that's blocked, or there's about 20 minutes between meetings, or you're waiting for the end-to-end test to pass, instead of either waiting around or committing to a new ticket, you can pick up a tiny little task that shouldn't take longer than half an hour at most. So that's working quite well for us. And yeah, the rest is pretty standard. We've got a backlog, we've got ready column, This is probably the most approachable dashboard that I could think to show you. This is stats on things that our team does that isn't necessarily critical for us to know when something goes wrong or anything like that. It's just simply interesting. So things that we've restored, how many things we've restored from the DPA today, how many files have been downloaded from the M2A workflow, for example. So that's quite nice to keep the team going and realising what effect they're having on ITV, I guess. This is a graph of all the work orders going through our systems right now. There's a big gap here between the line green, yellow, and here. We wait until it's about 6 days before the content is needed to transcode it. And this is quite a nice bar to show that everything that's needs to transcode has transcoded within 6 days. So that's quite a useful one that we use. And this is some stats on our S3 manager, so any downloads from any S3 buckets. So we're monitoring, what are we monitoring?
So,
I was looking at Alex.
downloads.
So how fast throughput, stuff like that?
Yeah, you've got throughput, and also there's a breakdown by partner on the right. So you can see how much data is delivered for, say, Sky ID or whatever else.
Cool. This is a fairly new one, so I'm not being completely ignorant. And yeah, that's everything that I could think that might be interesting for everyone.